Hi Rashmi, welcome to the NOA Symposium. Could you please give us a brief description of your role and what it involves?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me today. I tend to lead the sourcing process for large tenders, typically where the products or services are very ambiguous, very complicated, and are highly strategic. So it's designing and executing the end-to-end process from requirements gathering all the way up to negotiating the contract.
When designing a tender, what should be considered in order to assess potential positive collaboration between buyer and supplier?
So if you put the relationship aside for a moment, I think good tender design is made up of 5 things. One is you always need to start off with defining how are you going to assess quality. What does good look for you? What does good look like for your organization? It's easier said than done, but it's definitely worth the investment. The second thing to consider is the team. So who needs to be involved in the tender? What role are they going to play? And are they very well aware of the general principles that you're looking to apply as part of the tender? You then need to look at the evaluation criteria and the importance of each criteria. So how are you going to assess the suppliers? How are you going to assess whether they're good for you, whether they're providing good products or services? After that, you need to look at the evaluation activities. So these are what specific actions are you going to take to be able to inform the evaluation criteria and assess the firms against. And lastly, you want to look at assessment. So what is the most appropriate assessment approach for the work that you're going to do in the activities that will feed into the evaluation criteria? And this could be everything from scorecards, evaluation matrices, qualitative observations. The sky's the limit, I think, on that.
As a buyer establishing a complex relationship, who do you need on the tender team? What key roles should they play during the tender process?
So I think it's absolutely critical to not conduct the tender in a vacuum. Like, it shouldn't be a group of people that specialize in tenders and then leave and have the output of all that work is just handed off to the delivery teams. Starting from day one, starting from when you're actually designing the tender, you absolutely need the delivery teams involved. So this includes probably your accountable executive, whose neck is on the line if the products and services are not delivered successfully. Who is involved in supporting and ensuring that those products and services are delivered efficiently and to the standard that you want, and who else might be impacted by that relationship. You need to have them involved not just at evaluation or post-contract. It has to be from the very, very beginning, because that's the group that has a vested interest in the outcome of the tender, and that's the group that's going to take the principles forward and actually implement them after the contract is signed.
What's the best way for a buyer to evaluate their compatibility with a potential supplier?
So it's a very difficult and labor-intensive assessment. Sourcing traditionally, I think, has shied away from it because it's not quite as tangible as a technical assessment where you need someone to provide a specific product or service at a specific speed, let's say. But that doesn't mean that it can't be assessed. What you need is a critical mass of data. So probably a number of evaluators and a number of evaluation activities. You need a standardized approach for how you're going to assess each of those activities, so that way you've got fairness, and you're looking for consistency. The key thing about behavioral assessment and testing collaboration is looking for thematic observations, looking for trends, because a supplier cannot fake it across a large group of people for a long period of time. Their natural tendencies will come out, and you need to capture those tendencies and see if they align.
In your talk, you emphasised the importance of the sourcing lead. Why is this role so important, and would you say it's evolving?
So the sourcing lead, I think, is important because that's one of the few roles that has a full end-to-end view of what's happening across the tender. So if you are going to introduce relationship assessment as part of your tender, that often involves 50 or 60 people across a variety of different functions. Having a central point of contact to not only facilitate the process, but to ensure that you're staying on track and staying true to the principles of the tender across these 50, 60 people is really important. I think the role of the sourcing lead is best implemented by ensuring that the integrity of the tender is maintained. That way you've got a credible and confident outcome at the end. In terms of the evolution of the role, I would say traditionally sourcing is looked at as the paper pushers. We engage sourcing, tick box. They ran an RFP, tick box. They got a contract signed, tick box. And I think what's happening now is all that experience that these sourcing leads have by looking at different suppliers, dealing with different services and products, can be applied to better tender design and adding credibility and integrity to the process.